Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, December 7th. Had a bit of a false start, so we're starting over here. So I had opened a pack, but why not? Let's just open one more pack before we go and turn all of those cards that we had just gotten into dust. It's been a long time since I've actually gone through the cards and um, actually seen if there was anything new. Although, for the second to latest expansion, odds of me getting anything new that isn't just one of these tradables seems highly unlikely. And yeah, we are not significantly close to having all of these tradables, nor are we significantly close to having all the card points to start to use the tradables to make them be tradable. Which definitely does just go to point out that you would have to dump kind of a massive amount of money, real world money, into these cards to actually get everything you would want. I don't know if any of these cards are even going to be labeled as new. You can see, though, we have 93 pages, and each page has 16 cards. So we do have quite a collection. Now, that count gets confused, certainly when you have cosmetic versions of cards, and animated versions of cards, and basic cards that you got for free, and animated versions of basic cards that you got for leveling up your character. It's oddly sad, though, that I've not been able to really get into Shadowverse as much as a game, because I feel like the art on a lot of these cards, if it was more highlighted, if there was just an easier way to go into like a slideshow mode and look at all these cards, which you could do it this way certainly, but even then, to get to the biggest image, you have to go this way, and it's still kind of not as big. And I'd like to be able to click this and have this just be a full square. That's something that things like Magic the Gathering really have not embraced, or even Hearthstone have not really embraced the idea that they would have a large full screen image and then that would get framed out and some of the image would be lost because of the card frame in actual gameplay, but that doesn't inherently mean that the art has to be lost and never shown otherwise. So for the accountability section, I will say that in the past 3 or 4 weeks, I've been pretty bad about not doing anything at all. This is new, one animated card. But I have broken that trend, and I'm playing 3-hour-long episodes of the sequel to the Zero Escape game, 9 Doors, 9 Hours, 9 People, which is called Virtue's Last Reward, or the Nonary Games, Zero Escape, the Nonary Games, Virtue's Last Reward. There's some changes in the second game, certainly, so far that I've noticed. One is that they've made 3D models of the characters, which I think was a huge mistake and waste of budget. They voice acted a significant portion of the game, but not all of the game. The main character is never voice acted, so you still could never really put it in auto mode. You could go in auto mode fairly easily on the occasions you know that you're gonna just sit and listen to a conversation between two other characters, which happens on a rare occasion. But anytime the main character's involved, I feel the need to read it out loud, and you just really couldn't go into auto mode that way. Although auto mode is better, you could almost pull that off. But then they also didn't voice act the other characters when they are in the escape rooms, which the escape rooms still There are more escape rooms in this sequel than the first game, I think, but they are still fairly few and far between as far as the long visual novel sections and dialogue that happens there. Um, so there's easily at least one episode where I barely was able to do even one escape room in 3 hours. I think I easily went 2.5 hours of just text with no real branching dialogue choices at all. It's just straight text, which really does go to point out that if these games and this concept was written a little bit better, it probably would have been better suited to be turned into an anime than instead of a game, where you potentially have like the first 6 episodes setting up the setup of the concept, and then the last 6 episodes shows you bad endings, with the final episode like showing you good endings. And maybe you do that for 26 episodes instead of 13 if you want to really stretch it out. Also, you could probably use a heavy influence of flashbacks so that the first episode in an anime versus for Virtue's Last Reward, or even 999, could start with somebody having to make a decision. In Virtue's Last Reward, there is a specific point where you play these ambidex games, is what they're called, or AB games just for short, and it's straight up, do you ally or betray with somebody? And if you ally, you potentially give points, and if you betray, you potentially take away points, depending on how the other person voted who's against you. And it's kind of a prisoner's dilemma concept. There also is like no time limit, unlike the first game, which in the title it says 9 hours in the first game. In Virtue's Last Reward, there's basically no time limit, so every novel section says you have like 2 hours between the next part of the game that they can play, and it doesn't take a real world 2 hours to happen, but it does just open the story up for more conversation to happen and more things to happen. It is a very hurry up and wait story in a lot of places, where there are definitely times when somebody's been murdered and you would want to ask one more question of somebody, or look for one more thing, or investigate for one more thing. And instead of the game thinking of that, and the writers of the game thinking of that, they simply start the next AB game, and everybody then has to run to the voting booths to vote whether they're going to ally or betray. Virtue's Last Reward brings back Clover from the first game, and Alice, who was shown in the perfect ending at the very end of the first game, I believe. It's the same Alice. I'd heavily suspect it is. Alice in the first game was this like Egyptian princess who somehow could self-cryogenically freeze herself or something. So she's like thousands of years old, or hundreds of years old. Clover, unfortunately, as the story plays out, it feels like that Clover in the first game was barely 13, and in the second game, she feels like she's generously described as 18, and she's in a rave outfit with hot pants and a bikini top. All of the characters in Virtue's Last Reward are in much more wild costumes, whereas in the first game, 999, there was simply the one girl who was in the belly dancer outfit, and that was kind of left to its own, left without explanation throughout the the entirety of the game. Like, the best description explanation I got in 999 was that the belly dancer lady was simply going to a costume party, and I would have had to have just guessed that. They didn't say that. Or she was actually an exhibitionist. But they've scaled the exhibitionism even up, because Alice literally is topless in this game. She has a big golden necklace that goes around her neck and then connects a second big golden loop that just manages, because they are 2D models that don't move, to cover her nipples, but you get significant cleavage that you would get in a shirt that was like a v-neck, with also significant side boob and under boob. Her entire midriff is exposed. Because Clover's wearing a bikini top, her entire midriff is exposed too. There's a third girl who's actually fairly normally dressed, named Phi, and she says she's 20. The character you're playing as says they're 22. So if Phi, who looked like she was probably closer to 25 to me, is 20, then that has to put Clover at 18. And they introduced an even younger kid who, going along these scales, I would have to assume is about 8 years old in this murder game, named Quark. Although they do a nice job, really, of not having Quark play a big role in at least the timelines and paths I've played. He seems to be missing for large percentages of the story. And in most of the timelines I've played, Alice gets murdered, which I guess that's a slight spoiler, and I guess I may mention some slight spoilers here, but I'll try not to do it too bad. She in many of the timelines get murdered. It's not really much of a spoiler to say that pretty much everybody probably is going to get murdered in some timeline until we get to the perfect timeline, where maybe everybody will survive. There's a big disconnect basically on whether you choose to ally or betray, and how that then affects the rest of the story, because it affects who gets paired up with whom, and then that might affect who gets murdered, possibly, maybe not. It may very well be that just some characters get murdered regardless. But yeah, they kill off Alice in a lot of the timelines, which is good for my personal sanity, because like every time she was shown in her 3D model, and she's just basically topless, and a few times she's basically topless and not really, she's not really shy about it in any way. So she's basically topless in front of all of the characters, including Quark, and nobody seems to mention it. This is a game that's set in a alternate universe and a 2038, so it might very well be the case that that those type of hang-ups are not a thing, certainly, but it definitely is visually distracting to see. Alice does have like this really tiny coat, but the coat covers her shoulders and then hangs freely on the sides, so it's not covering any part of her chest, which at any point she could have, if this was a real world, she could have put the coat, potentially close the coat up, or to at least cover the under boob and side boob, or she could have been given a shirt or a cloth that several of the other characters were wearing extra. You're
too strong.
There we go. Quick disconnect. I will take that and move forward happily. One of the problems, certainly, with Virtue's Last Rewards is that it is wearing on me somewhat doing 3-hour episodes, and 3-hour episodes is really the only way I'd be able to schedule just like 30 episodes and have that series not take up half a year airing on my channel and spend a whole bunch of time scheduling that series. Also, it's kind of a niche thing, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. If I was to make 30-minute or an hour-long episodes on a visual novel, then my entire channel for that entire year becomes a visual novel channel.
I bring unto you serenity.
So, but yeah, it is getting... I do want to get back to it. I'm not losing momentum yet, but it is getting... it was getting last night while I was playing it a little difficult to maintain focus and continue to want to play it. Also, it has a to be continued system that seems to be a little bit more difficult than the first game. It felt like in the first game you could get to actual endings just on your first try. Here, I've managed to get to one longer bad ending that I think has to be done before you could potentially have a good ending, or I just managed to go on the good path and unlock the good ending. But there's a certain point where it says you've got to type in this code, and there's no way you would know the code until you've done all the previous games, all the other previous endings. So I started doing the other previous endings, and I'm on like the fourth one, and some of them are just straight up dead endings. About half of them are going to be straight up dead endings. So they just don't really add anything to it. And then the good endings seem to also be to be continued endings. So where it feels like in the first game you could have done all the bad endings in any order, here it feels like you have to do all the bad endings in a specific order, and there's going to be a lot more rewinding and a lot more of a lot more grinding to unlock everything you need. Is there anything else to say about Virtue's Last Reward? It drastically changes the rules of the nonary game compared to the first game, and that's good. You're no longer doing math. Instead, it gives you these color puzzles, but then it also explains to you exactly how these color chromatic door puzzles work, so you don't really have to understand any of that at all. The escape rooms themselves have little mini puzzles that you have to figure out yourself, but only one of those has been particularly hard. Each of the escape rooms in Virtue's Last Reward has a alternate solution that will open up a safe and give you a different a file that gives you like backstory stuff, but I'm not sure that you really need the backstory stuff at all. Most of it seems to be unnecessary. They've kind of dropped the ball as far as giving you memos and archives as far as what the exact rules are, because the rules are fairly complicated. They introduce a character at the very beginning who's kind of a comic relief character, and then they forget him fairly quickly, and then you pretty much never see him again, which I think is probably a mistake. Because unlike a story, a normal story, it is really just like all rising action as you go down these timelines. So you're talking 6 to possibly even 10 hours straight of rising action, when at some point there should have been some falling action, some comedic points, and they definitely give themselves enough time for something like that to happen. But I would say each timeline does feel a little bit quicker than the first game. I'll say that the Steam version that is the bundle of the two nonary games gives you achievements for doing things, but it doesn't fully explain which achievement goes for which game. So there's a level of uncertainty there if you're actually gonna easily be able to get all the achievements just for seeing all the endings. You probably would, though. There really aren't a lot of choices in the game. It's very stagnant as an experience. Right. How do we want to do this? Pop it in your hand and give it Bane.
Behold my newest creation, Julie.
Go ahead and kill that.
My throat's bone dry.
And then... So we'd want to play all of these and then play this.
I'll play my part. Ow!
It's actually safer just to do this. 1, 2, 3.
Lost.
Another victory. Wow, we might get
In serenity.
a nice win streak and be able just to grind. Of course, I've probably been falling further and further behind. Well, do we have anything else to talk about in the accountability section then, other than Virtue's Last Reward? I probably will just be playing Virtue's Last Reward for a long time, and there won't be a lot to say other than what I've already said. There's lip flap issues in which the lip flaps of the 3D model of characters only seem to line up maybe with Japanese. They don't seem to line up at all with English. You can't go into the menu and switch between Japanese and English, nor can you go into the menu and change any of the options that are on the main launcher. It does have gamepad support, but then there's a memo mode that lets you have 2 screens, because I assume the limitation of the 3DS. And you can draw memos, but frankly, you're going to probably need to draw fairly small and redraw the memos, because anything that you need to be written down, which are almost certainly going to be passwords, should be squeezed on those 2 pages, and those 2 pages, so multiple passwords for potentially like 8, could be, I doubt 18, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 12 escape rooms. So that they don't give you enough room there, and drawing that with a gamepad is not an effective way to do it. So I pull out the mouse at that point, and that's just a smoother action to draw. You do get all the passwords once you solve them. The dual passwords, the alternate password and the regular passwords.
Will be your terminus.
So if you need to replay a section, you can literally just go put in the password. Again, you don't have to solve any of the escape room stuff, which would buy you time, but I don't think you actually need to buy time. Okay. X equals the number of allied puppets in play. So if I put 1 here and 1 here, that should kill 2 people. Yeah, but I don't think there's really too much more to say about the game without just drastically spoiling it, which for a lot of people I imagine drastically spoiling it would be just as good, because I imagine there's a lot of people out there that do not want to go into the deep and scary region of playing visual novels. Guess if I put this here
100% string
and then
0
do this,
A spin and a twirl and up. There's a
and then we
puppy
do
to
that, and we do that, and then end the turn. So yeah, let's start going through the video game news. It would be bearing the lead to say that, to not mention that Cyberpunk, that Cyberpunk 2077 is getting reviews coming out, at a certain level. The percentage of those reviews are going to be fairly small, because it's an embargoed review, and we will just have to look at those reviews in a second and see how it's going. It seems like some people are saying it's great, although it does seem like Giant Bomb says that it's unpolished, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. The Google CEO has been retweeted saying Google and Apple are going to try and make a COVID-19 exposure notification app. I feel like there's some controversy around the Game Awards, in the sense that the Last of Us creator came out and said anybody who doesn't vote for his game is just a hater, which that could be done in jest. Certainly that could be said in jest, as much as in honest disdain. But it does potentially point out a issue of something you could fairly easily assume with the Last of Us creators, is that if you're going to come out with such a preachy game, you probably also have your head up your butt in many different situations and can't take criticism well, and I think that has always been the case, and we probably already knew that, so that at a certain level stops becoming news and just becomes repeating the exact same facts that people already knew. I don't know if there's anything more to say about that. The re-release of Sam & Max Saving the World was apparently modified in several places. Lines of dialogue were changed to be more SJW, I would say, and less funny. Inherently, it's a censorship argument, like all other censorship arguments. Even though they are definitely tried to say in an FAQ that they didn't change any of the dialogue or anything. But it also would be a little bit ridiculous to come out and and say you shouldn't buy the remastered version of Sam & Max Save the World because of the censorship. But it does also point to maybe you shouldn't support Skunk Ape if you hate censorship. Both of those are true. But you are talking over the course of a 5-episodic game, a tiny bit of changes, which that almost happens, usually not for censorship reasons, but something gets changed almost always in a remaster of a game. Just visuals get tweaked, changed, and there's always reporting around that, and you have to make your own decision. I guess I wouldn't blame anybody if they also said, you know what, they weren't that thrilled with playing Sam & Max Save the World again anyway, so they would rather not support Skunk Ape games. It does say a lot about Skunk Ape games that they would waste their time going and changing lines of dialogue when there was really no call for that. Let's see. If we do this, and then we evolve here, and then hit here, hit that. Go ahead, put that on the field, and do that. Go ahead and put that on the field. That needs to evolve. Didn't do that right. Just go and hit that. And hit that. Oops. I overplayed.
You're a big fella.
I totally overplayed that.
You'll find gizmos like this every millennium.
You will atone for wasting my time.
I usually don't talk about straight up adult games that aren't available on Steam, because at a certain point there's just no real credibility around that. But there is this pinball game called Geiko, Geiko Ball, where literally it's an anime girl that's like chained up and in the middle of a pinball table, and you're just shooting pinballs to knock off her underwear and shoot a ball straight up her, and at a certain point you flip the table over and it flips her over. It's like very, very explicit, but also kind of like amazingly
Perhaps you're who I've been waiting for.
Do you know my master?
a weird concept that I don't think I would have ever thought of before. Yeah, but it did visually stand out. Also, Twitch has removed the blind playthrough tag because they're idiots and SJWs, and they didn't want to offend blind people. Now, I guess there might be a better way you could have done that if that's what you internally felt and made that not sound so crazy, because you could say maybe the blind playthrough doesn't explain itself well enough, because there's probably people who do blind playthroughs who are wearing blindfolds, and there probably are people who do blind playthroughs as in they've just never played the game before, and so there might be a level of confusion around that concept. So you could easily say we're getting rid of the blind playthrough tag, and we're instead asking you to use the first playthrough tag, or the blindfolded playthrough tag. It was Neil Druckmann uh, Last of Us 2's Neil Druckmann that calls people not voting for his games haters, by the way. And these are all articles that I don't have pulled up. There was something else. What else was it? I feel like somebody recently just died either today or the other or yesterday. But I've lost that story. I feel like it was a writer of one of the Japanese games has died. I feel like we probably will have a decent number of those stories in general as time goes on. Japan is particularly vulnerable to the pandemic and just old age, in the sense that they don't give younger people the opportunities that they need. And at a certain level, you might put some of the blame on that on just the seniority system and unions that are much more prevalent in Japan. On the other hand, that is a design and intentional, not something that the unions would say is a bad thing, because you have the exact opposite scenario in all the, well, at least half of the United States, where unions are regularly busted and weakened, where the elderly and the people who work at jobs for the longest amount of time get fired just as a cost-saving measure instead of keeping them around. It is a weird catch-22. There are scenarios certainly where somebody has seniority and that keeps them employed or gives them promotions they don't deserve because they're not good employees. But then also there's a lot of managers who say the good employees are bad employees because they don't want to pay them, and they try to bring in cheaper, younger labor who inherently, almost certainly on average, a brand new employee is going to be a worse employee. But particularly in the Japanese industry, where older people are revered and allowed to work a lot longer than they probably should be allowed to work, we're going to start to see more and more writers who have been working on video game series, more and more directors and designers who have been working on video game series die, and it will just be that big question mark. Can the employees who were working under that person take up the slack and continue working, or does the whole company just shutter itself and fall apart around that? Either one is possibly the case. The Studio Ghibli is a great example of that, where pretty much any time the main guy of Studio Ghibli, who is increasingly getting older, doesn't have his focus around making a movie. The movies, the side projects they make that don't include him, I forget his name. I should know his name, but it slipped my mind. When any movie Studio Ghibli does that doesn't include the main guy tends to not sell well at all, or be well received. And one of the side people that they're trying to set up to be his replacement is his son, and the animation directing skill is clearly not going to be passed down just by genetics. And that's just another case of like revering family and lineage, when probably there is somebody inside of Studio Ghibli that would be a better pick. Of course, if you compare that to the way things are done in the West, there's basically a way worse situation in the West, because whoever wrote the story for the Doom 2016 reboot, like, is there any guarantee that that's the same person who was kept around and made Doom Eternal? Do we really know that? Is the person who wrote Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 the same person that made Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2? Or does everybody just get fired and moved around, and there's just no reverence whatsoever for any of the top creative creators of games? Like, as much as the creator of Last of Us 2 might be a pain, and Ed Boon and the guy in charge of the Fable stories might be a pain, each of those people did at least have an artistic vision, and their loss would or has been felt in the past. And that does create a scenario unlike the Japanese games, where you can have 10, 12 Higurashi visual novels that are probably written by the exact same person, compared to Western games where the real creators of Diablo 1 may have moved on to make Torchlight, and then Torchlight 2 wasn't made by the creators of Torchlight 1 because they went on to make some other game. So if you were a real fan of Diablo 1 or Diablo 2, then you have to know the names of these creators and follow them and see how that turns out. Moving on, let's see. We've got some games, and we had games left over, so I really needed to rush today, and I'm not doing that. We have a game here called Dark Side of War, which is just a Wolfenstein clone. It's seemingly doing absolutely nothing new, and it's mixed for 59 cents. Suppose we are gonna try to be on the lookout today to see if we see any adult games come out on Steam. I guess we are also on the lookout to see if Steam is going to have any kind of Christmas December sale. The fall sale was basically nothing, so yeah. If the December sale is basically nothing, this might be the beginning of Steam sales boiling down to being nothing. Which for this year in particular, that'd make a lot of sense. But you'd want them to bounce back eventually.
Think well. There are 1,000 ways to die.
Accept harmony.
If one is not mistaken.
2 play points. I need more. I need 3 points. Play points.
One hit.
Good draw.
TechRaptor has an article here. The wonderful wheeled game The Quarter is now available. Which seems to just be a button. 20 to 30 minute experience for $1.69. You can see TechRaptor is scraping the bottom of the barrel here to have such an empty looking game. Like, you have almost this requirement, if you're going to make a minimalistic, simplistic game, to then throw in some wild visuals in some scenario that you can show off in the screenshots. See, for instance, if you think about the Stanley Parable, if the Stanley Parable had only shown you screenshots of that first room where Stanley was sitting in front of his computer, and not shown any of the wilder, crazier ending visuals, that totally would not have sold at all. And definitely the Stanley Parable would have been a very bad game if that was all you did, was actually sit in front of that computer screen in the first room and had a bunch of narration happen around you. It's much more difficult to to show that there's story and narration without instead of showing visuals. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Candy Disaster, which is some kind of very visually polished tower defense game. It feels like it might be a Chinese game looking at the trailer. It's early access. It's planned to come out in January 2021, English, Chinese, and German.
Unto you serenity.
Like, a lot of the text in the trailer was in Chinese. And the trailer does a much better job of showing what it is, which it is a system where you're building up traps for lemmings, basically. And I think you're kind of doing a bad job to refer this as a tower defense game, really. That being said, even what you're showing is not interesting enough to fully motivate me to want to put it on the follow list. But if I guess it actually did come back out, and I might put it on the follow list later if I decide to be more generous later. Next we have a game on Steam, Telomere 2 Curse of Kittens by Chris McFarland, not to be confused with Todd McFarland, the person who I believe makes all the free open source music. It would be funny, frankly. No, that's Kevin MacLeod that makes all the open source music games. Todd McFarland is the guy who makes the Spawn comics. So yeah, name's easy to confuse there. No relation, as far as I know. So what this actually looks like to me, though, is more of a player versus player game. I'd almost be interested in playing a Metroidvania game where you have to run around and collect all the kittens. That would be a funny twist, certainly, if you're playing as this cat lady. And maybe the different cats give you different magical abilities in this game. It's $5.99 English, Chinese, and Portuguese Brazil. Yeah. The thing I guess to really ask here, and this is how you're going to waste time, is there a Telomere 1? It came out in 2015 and it was rated as very positive. So people like the first one. In the first one, though, it doesn't seem like there's any kittens. So that was something that is added in the sequel. I just don't think the visuals are that great, and I don't think they've been improved that much. It does kind of feel like this might be sort of like Rogue Legacy, where you get in certain rooms and they challenge you to escape the room without taking too much damage. But yeah, just not enough visual polish. Although I will totally applaud Chris McFarland for releasing a game 4 years after another game, or well, I guess 5 years after another game, and not flooding the Steam market with garbage, nor giving up and not creating anything else for the rest of their life. See. So I need 3 play points to play the mechanical designs. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Mind Muscle VR, which I think that's not safe, frankly, to potentially do weightlifting in VR. Like, at one level, you might have something like this if somebody had like a severe disability and couldn't lift anything heavier than the controller, but you're kind of lying to them by having numbers on those weights and making them look that big. If that's not the case, there's no magical technology in any VR handles that would make them 20 pounds or 15 pounds or 1 pound even. At a certain point, I think holding a 1 pound weight is probably getting to the same level as holding a controller in VR anyways. Yeah, so yeah, there's there, there's a danger in that. There's a danger in actually holding weights in VR and potentially swinging around the weight and breaking glass or hitting somebody in the head. There's a danger generally just exercising and not seeing yourself. There's a reason why there are mirrors all throughout gyms. It's so you can see the form and the actions and spot yourself and do it right, because there's a lot of opportunities, from what I hear, to hurt yourself pretty badly if you're not keeping your form, if you don't know what you're doing. Gyms do a very poor job, in my opinion, to make sure that people know how to use the equipment and know how to do the exercises they're supposed to do. Instead, they're just all about selling memberships that they hope people won't even use. This is a free game in VR, so I guess I would applaud that. And visualization, frankly, mentally might be a good idea, but not when you're actually moving your hands and arms. At the core of it, this really is a game where they are just kind of asset flipping a room and trying to make it look more unique than it really would be. All right. Let's do that. To do that. To do that.
You're a big fella.
To do that. So yeah, even though that's a free VR game, I'm not going to put it on the fall list. Next we have a game on Steam called Rise of Dragons, which looks like a Chinese Diablo style MMO game. It's mixed, it's early access, English Chinese, nothing special about it. Next we have a game called Stars Survival, which is tagged as a multiplayer player versus player game. Looks like it's a space shooting game. I guess it's a space battle royale game, which at a certain point, isn't that just EVE? Free to play online PvP with in-app purchases, English and French. Yeah, I feel like you could easily just play EVE online and have a much better experience around something like that. Let's do that. Then do that. Do that. Hit that. And then do that. There we go. Yeah. See, next we have a game on Steam called Gravity Shifter, which looks to me like it might be a physics simulator, or it might just be kind of an asset flip game, because it's a 3D sci-fi space adventure that will let you travel in zero gravity. All I see is just a bunch of asteroids in space. $24.99, English only, is incredibly expensive for what it's showing me. Puppets or Evolve or
Think well. There are 1,000 ways to die.
Sleep.
If one is not mistaken, one
hit that.
cave in.
And we'll go ahead and hit these. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam, Snowball Fight at Christmas, which just clearly looks like a Chinese game. Which I might get to the point in a couple years where I start to applaud Chinese games for embracing Christmas way more than the Japanese developers do, because Japanese developers don't. Japanese people in general just don't really embrace Christmas, not being a Christian country really. So this is $2.39 with English not supported, so I don't really follow that idea greatly. Although I guess in all fairness, officially China is an atheist state, and religions or organized religion is not smiled upon at the very least. So them embracing Christmas is a little surprising too. Yeah, the only time you see anything Christmassy in a Japanese story is it's usually the idea of eating KFC and maybe going on a date with, or more of a romantic experience for Christmas compared to more of a family experience. And I would say in the West, yeah, if you are not one with a lot of family that you're going to interact with or close to, Christmas as a potential month-and-a-half long holiday can be particularly depressing. I could definitely see that, since that there is no good examples of being single, being alone, living on your own for Christmas. Or frankly, I guess that's probably true for any holiday. But let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Last of Us, which you'd think Steam would probably not allow that word in their titles. Let's see. Which it doesn't seem like there's a donkey in this game, and this does just feel like a horror kind of asset flip game. It's $2.39, whole bunch of languages. I feel like that goes in a weird direction, certainly as a YouTube video game critic, where I could figure that it might very well be the case that YouTube might demonetize some of my videos if I started cussing a lot. They have directly said that, frankly, is the tone and the words you use might make it not YouTube family friendly. So it then opens up a lot of doors if Steam becomes this just extreme libertarian storefront where people could put like really extreme language, perhaps insulting language. At a certain point, you're also opening the door to a lot of troll games where it's just like Trump sucks 2019, and then Trump sucks 2020 comes out a month later. If you start letting your storefront be the free speech platform with no limitations whatsoever, in which people can just spend $100 to put out any message they want or any phrasing, that makes your company look bad. And almost any other storefront would not allow that. I'm sure you're not going to run into the Epic Game Store having a game called Last of... I guess maybe that's supposed to be a pun on Last of Us. And even if that was the case, that is a pun name that should be in like a adult game, not just a horror game. Okay. This. And then that. And then that. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Primate Signal, which has some wild visuals here. But at a certain level, this doesn't feel like an art style that I can get behind as much as it just feels like somebody is really, really bad at animating. Yeah. And at a certain level, I feel like an artist with this kind of skill of animation maybe works in a webcomic or just even newspaper comic if you can get printed in it, where somebody should potentially spend 10 years just getting better at their animation skill, refining this at a certain level. I would definitely say animators like Jim Davis, who almost certainly does not work on the Garfield comics at all anymore and has just a bunch of underlings that are doing all the animations. And frankly, he may never have actually improved. He may have literally just had ghost animators, ghost writers make the Garfield comics. But yeah, Jim Davis's animation style that we can probably attribute to him in the first 5 to 10 years of Garfield is pretty awful. And then it slowly gets better and better, and eventually it gets down to what I imagine its current state is, which is consistent and good enough. Primate Signal just does not feel like it's there. And all these elements could certainly exist still, but the anatomy, the angle, the tiny head here, all of that feels like that needs to be adjusted. This game is $4.01, and it's English only. You could see, like, you have big anime eyes on this character, but then kind of lips that you might say are upside down. Normally you would see like the top lip smaller than the bottom lips, and then unnecessary details as far as a sparkly necklace that you're going to have to draw over and over again. Unnecessary details as far as sparkling in the glasses. You could probably have gotten rid of these bits of hair way over her eyes. This implies a character that is just so that she can keep her hair kempt, but not for very long. Also, she can't. She probably would just want to cut all these bangs. Here you have a lot of detail in a design on the shirt, where a simple pattern would have been easier to redraw. Here you have tears and possibly stains on the shirt. There's
There are 1,000 ways to die.
There we go. This character's in a wheelchair also, so then you've got more details on the wheelchair you've got to draw, which that probably is important. And you see like unnecessary details and necklaces on this character. You see large amounts of hair here in this character. Yeah. The game itself seems to be taking place in part in like a cyber world, a VR world of some sort, or a video game world. Maybe not VR. Okay. Let's see.
You will atone for wasting my time.
-10 to random enemy, banish random enemy amulet, give an amulet of at start of your next turn, lose play points. Okay. can just evolve that.
Sheer hubris of a po. What's your price?
Please steal responsibly.
Let's see. Need to play something that costs at least 5 play points later to unlock that one. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Public Defense Corp, which is tagged as an RPG with sexual content and JRPG. So this does feel like one of those JRPGs where there's a scene where the character is gonna end up naked, but then the vast majority of the time it's just a JRPG set apparently on mostly on a spaceship or in an office. Let's see, it's $13.49 English, Japanese, and Chinese. I'm not really seeing anything here that would make this stand out in the crowd though. So no to that as far as that going to the follow list. This next game is Tag Nudity, so I guess we have finally hit the adult games. Let me make sure it's YouTube family friendly. Seems like it might have some furries in it too. Alright. So we have a game here called Summon and Fusion, which looks like it's a Chinese like gacha game with 3D anime girls models that you get, and then they have little cards, and then here's a little gacha game that you would summon more things from. You're making teams to potentially put them on this playfield, and here you can see several animal like creatures. They're probably the enemies, and it's much like Destiny Child Defense War. It's a tower defense where all the characters are in a little grid and the enemies just creep along. At least that's what it seems like. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't claim that Destiny Child Defense War is a new concept by any means. So they did, in my opinion, save themselves some frustration by using an already well-liked video game series and using the art and the music and the feel of that. Because if Destiny Child Defense War didn't have Destiny Child in front of it, I would never give it the slightest time of day. And in all fairness, I'm not really giving it much of my time anyways, because I've mostly ignored it in favor of actually playing the real Destiny Child, which is claiming a 2nd year anniversary, and I have to assume that's just 2nd year anniversary global. They recently gave the results for like a voting poll that they had, and in that voting poll the most amount of votes they even had was like 2,000, so and also inherently shows that it is definitely a smaller niche audience than I would have even thought. I wouldn't be surprised if there is less than 300,000 people across the world playing Destiny Child global, which I would say it deserves more than that. Assuming you're not going to fall into the gacha part of it. Which almost certainly the whales are holding up a game like that. Like, I'm watching the trailer here for Summon and Fusion, and yeah, it's just a tower defense. They're not showing or even implying any of the nudity, mature, not safe for work stuff.
Power of mortality.
Suppose it's worth mentioning that once you have like one star of the same thing, you drag one star onto the other star, and then it merges to a 2-star that might be the same character or a random different character that's a 2-star, and that's how you continue to upgrade around the limited number of spaces in a tower defense like that. Summon and Fusion is tagged as English, Japanese, and Chinese. Um, so take your pick as to who you think actually is making that game. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam here called A Monster and a Mauler, which the video here is being played off of a TV screen for all of this. That's pretty pathetic. Like, you can definitely tell every single one of these images is a photo taken off of a TV screen. So if you're not capable of taking a screenshot of the game you're programming, are you actually smart enough or trustworthy enough to make a game that's worth $7.99? I would say definitively no. So that just puts you've just put your worst foot forward in that presentation. And in all fairness, A Monster and a Mauler is not a terrible name. It's not a terrible thumbnail. It looks slightly interesting, other than the fact that it's just a visual no, it's just an RPG maker looking game. But you've blown your one and only chance. Open Critic has an article here. Neil Druckmann is now co-president of Naughty Dog. He was promoted from the position of vice president to co-president, which at a certain level, why would you do that? Like, because that kind of screams that the current president is not willing to step down or leave, and there's some ridiculous board in general. Like, making co-presidents is a sign of nobody being in charge, really, because you cannot have two presidents, you can't have two leaders, you just can't do it. Like, if the United States decided to name two presidents at the same time, that would be a nightmare. This chain of command falls apart. What happens when some game director goes in Naughty Dog goes to one co-president and says, "Can you approve my $1 million budget?" And then the other co-president comes out and says, "No, I wasn't going to approve that $1 million budget." There's no definitive authority at all around that concept. So that screams bad news for me. They are also making Allison Mori and Christian Gearing as vice presidents of Naughty Dog. So it's like two presidents. The only thing you could take from this is it's possible, straight up, that Naughty Dog is about to split in half. Like, that's the only thing you could imagine here, is that they are setting themselves up to be split into two completely separate entities, and some of the vice presidents will go one way and some of the co-presidents will go another way. Okay. This would be a 2-1. Guess I should just play that. Chick Raptor has a review for that game, The Corridor. They gave it a 0.0. The corridor immediately closes after you push the first button. It's not even worth playing. Pros, it has a corridor as advertised. The bonus button feature adds interactivity. Cons, pressing the button closes the game. Door feature is not implemented well in 10 walls, really. And then there's more to it. Alright, this is different. This is weird because they give you a fake review summary of 0-0. Hmm. When you launch again, it starts anew, and things start changing. So it's kind of like the Stanley Parable. And then they say now it's a 9.0, which that's dangerous certainly to do, because somebody could easily quote mine and just mention the 0.0. And in fairness, I don't think Tech Raptor probably has ever given the 0.0 to anything. So then they say is pressing the button makes weird fun happen. A perfectly concise experience. 9.0. Charming plays with players' expectations into entertaining narration, interesting variants on one theme. Cons repeated closures can get annoying. Resetting progress is not readily obvious. I don't know if there really is enough game there, frankly, for me. Like, the Stanley Parable went in a very different direction, and there was lots of branching paths. There was a lot going on outside of that first starting room. If the Stanley Parable was just walking down a corridor and hitting a button and then it exiting out, which is annoying, particularly if you're going to try and record, that seems frustrating. Like, not really worth it. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Interactive Empathy, which are experimental games as part of a 1-week workshop. So basically game jam games. And they're just like kind of nothing. These feel like Apple II games from decades past, really. Point and click. It's free, so I guess the price is right. But at a certain point, this feels much more like a they're artists, not game dev professionals, so why do I care about them? Unlike video game students, who could be up and comers, and I might be highlighting, helping them in their career. These are artists coming in, doing something they're not skilled with, and that explains particularly why it feels like these are not games that are programmed to a modern standard of quality. English, French, and German. Yeah, I don't think I can justify. I don't think I can justify putting that one on the wish list or follow list either. Either one. And certainly at a certain level you have this issue where whether they're artists or whether they're game developers, who, let's be honest, game developers are artists in themselves. They're just different kinds of artists. So this whole group effort is just replacing video game artists with other artists for no reason. Artists in general tend to be self-aggrandizing, overly political people, and that gets annoying, particularly when you don't have somebody who is of a quality in their development and in the polish of their storytelling. So you often get extremely preachy stories being told to you.
Wrong formula.
Seriously?
Thy little canary. Thy little canary.
There we go. Might as well play that, I guess.
Protein time.
see what else have we got. We have a game on Steam called Silent Mansion Summoner Part 2, which is VR, and it looks visually polished well enough. I feel like this game had the first one, Silent Mansion, come out less than 6 months ago. It's $4.89 English only. Let's look and see when the first game came out. Corrupted Hospital Summoner Part 1 came out in October 23rd of 2020. And see, there's a Summoner of the Ruined Village demo that came out in September, and now they have Silent Mansion Part 2. So they're just all over the place trying to make this Summoner series something. But 68% of 25 user reviews are positive, which is hardly big numbers.
Welcome to the city of hopes and dreams.
So yeah, that game's not making it to the fall list. Let's see. The Control developer Remedy is hiring a development manager for the XDev team, which might be Xbox. Maybe not. That's in Espoo, Finland. Managing scope for an individual XDev internal project that ensures all needs are met to deliver time on budget. Yeah. Like, I kind of feel like XDev implies Xbox. Let's see. 3 points. Destroy that.
Formula.
And then hit that.
I won't lose again.
And hit that.
Gotcha.
Think we might win here. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Catch a Cat for 60 Seconds, which is a oddly angled Flappy Bird game. I don't even see any cats in it. Just really terribly. Oh, I guess these are little pink cats are the things you're trying to get while playing Flappy Bird. 99 cents English only. Even at 99 cents, that price is too high. There we go. Probably doesn't hurt to just draw one more card. We have an article here from Gamasutra. Activision Blizzard lawsuit is accusing Netflix of poaching their chief financial officer, Spencer Newman. Newman was hired by Netflix within days of a messy departure. Now, arguably, I don't think poaching should be illegal, like, because inherently the argument you're making there of poaching should be illegal is that corporations should be able to control and potentially ruin the lives of their employees, which they already have way too much power to do that already. And an employee is not free to go and work somewhere else. In fact, pretty much all the arguments against an employee being able to take what they had learned and what they know and go and work for a competitor is mostly just complete and total BS in my opinion. The only way in my mind you could even get capitalism to start to be fair is the threat that if a corporation does not treat their employees well, whether that is a lowly, just entry-level employee or a high-level chief financial officer in this case, is the threat that if you don't treat those employees nicely, they will go and get another job. There will be other jobs that they can get, and they will be able to take everything they've learned there and every skill and every bit of information.
I bring unto you serenity.
Even the idea
Come on.
of proprietary, which is this like pseudo made up term as best as I can figure, that has like very little legal standing, if any, is ridiculous. That proprietary is business's way of saying, oh, we classified that because we're a government and we can classify things and we should have that power. Even that should be shouldn't be really there. It totally should be the case that if Apple treats an employee badly, they can take everything they know about the Apple internal processes and go work at Google and just tell everything they want to tell to their to Google.
Thy little canary.
Yeah, and this definitely feels like this is a just sour grapes accusation for sure. It's like, clearly you didn't want Spencer Newman, and he didn't even go and work for a different video game company. He's working for Netflix, and Netflix, anyways. In the lawsuit, Activision said Netflix encouraged Newman to breach his employment contract while Newman was negotiating with Netflix as part of the duties of the Activision's then chief financial officer. There might be a bigger trend here in that it was only a year or so ago that we had the chief financial officer in a lawsuit with the Gearbox chief financial officer in a lawsuit with the CEO, Randy Pitchford of Gearbox. And then he eventually ended up, I believe, being the chief lawyer for the National Rifle Association. Let's see.
I won't stop singing until there's
Let's hit that.
Or not to die.
To leave.
Then hit this.
You need to leave.
And this one could have taken damage too.
Begin.
corny. There's nothing corny about my guitar gently beats.
Let's keep on playing. So yeah, they're claiming that Newman breached his employment contract, which is bull. Almost certainly. Part of the encouragement allegedly came from Netflix's CEO, Reed Hastings, who was personally involved. Let's see. Apparently, this is the third time Netflix has been accused of illegally poaching employees from other entertainment companies. Newman has been with Netflix for close to 2 years after being hired by the streaming service as its chief financial officer in 2019. While rumors of the hire had circulated days before it was made official, they got raised eyebrows given that it came just days after Newman was placed on leave pending firing from his role as the chief financial officer at Activision Blizzard after a year and a half with the company. So he hadn't even been with the company that long, so I don't know why you're making such a big stink about an employee that hasn't even been around there that long. And see, if I click on this article as far as what the messy departure really was, this is going to just take me to an older Gamma Sutra article. At a certain level, it gets really hard to care about a story like this. I will admit, it's like, oh, one corporation is screwing another corporation, who cares? Like, there is better, there's more important things certainly to talk about. There are thousands upon thousands of other people that are suffering more than these two companies. There's plenty of people at Activision Blizzard in particular that are not getting treated well and probably aren't getting paid well enough. Yeah. See, and what I would say, from what I'm getting from the story, he was apparently terminated for cause for violating his legal obligations to the company. Well, then why aren't they going after Newman? Like, why are they accusing Netflix at a certain point? And this, in a lot of ways, is just going to feel like the Oculus Rift lawsuit all over again with Facebook. And there's probably just going to be guilt on both sides. And it's going to almost certainly just waste the court's time and not serve any greater good to even hear a case like that. If I was a judge in a case like that, I'd just say, you know what, I'm going to force you to arbitrate forever, and if you actually bring it in front of me, I'm probably going to rule against both of you and not waste my time on it, because this is the kind of case that I don't think any judge really wants to hear. Is big rich company complaining about other big rich company doing something that might be slightly shady, but is in no way is that shady. If anything, you would much prefer to investigate Netflix for its like kind of expensive monthly fees. Certainly, there's the whole cuties thing that they probably deserve some more criticism around that. Although that's really probably not going to go anywhere and shouldn't probably go anywhere, because at a certain point you're just going to open the door to a lot of censorship if you rule the wrong way on the whole cuties mess. Moving on to the next controversy. Game Sutra has an article here. Sony Interactive Entertainment head pushes back against the claim that PlayStation is deprioritizing Japan. I completely don't believe him on that one. The Sony stance is that the Japanese market remains incredibly important to us. We have not been as excited about the engagement of the Japanese game development community as we are now for many years. So he's saying this is like total BS here, that now is the time that they're excited about Japanese game development, when the PlayStation 5 units are extremely low and we have not seen any real announcements. On one hand, it might very well be that in their mind they are excited about the Japanese game development community, in the sense that they might be excited to take their California SJW-ness to Japanese games and take an axe to them and censor them, which is what they've been doing for at least the last couple of years. But the actual number of games that have been announced and that are coming out for the PlayStation seem to be particularly low. Bloomberg, the original Bloomberg story cited sources within Sony that said PlayStation's 4 disappointing performance in Japan has led the company to shift more of its focus to the US for the PlayStation 5 generation. It's believable, although I never got that message. If you had asked me before the PlayStation 5 was announced if the PlayStation 4 was doing bad in Japan, I would have sworn up and down it was doing great. It almost certainly was doing better than it was definitely doing better than the Xbox One. So I don't know if they were seeing their competition more as Nintendo, where I think that's probably a mistake to compare yourself to Nintendo and the Switch, or if they were seeing their competition more as PC gaming, which I really wouldn't argue that PC gaming has become amazingly popular. if PC gaming had become the amazingly popular new platform, then I feel like Famitsu at some point would have had a conversation and considered putting PC hardware sales as a metric. And there's, I guess, not too many people to do that, but there would definitely be a way to do that where you simply get the hardware sales of gaming PCs or PCs sold for gaming in Japan. You could probably pull that off.
Welcome to the city of hopes and dreams. Hands up!
See, the article goes on to say that the PlayStation 4 generation saw an uptick in attention from Japanese developers, and the momentum is trending up in these early days for PlayStation 5 on current partnerships between PlayStation and Japanese developers and publishers. As I'd also observe that we're making a statement by launching in Japan day and date with the US, and that's not what we did with the PS4. Well, was the PS4 in Japan earlier? Because I would have a hard time believing it was later. So I read that stuff. A lot of commentary is inaccurate. In Japan, as our second largest market and as Sony's homeland, continues to be really important to us. But yeah, in all fairness, what's he going to say? He's not going to straight up say, you're right, we have de-emphasized the Japanese market. And yeah, I guess the proof will be in the pudding. And at a certain level, I have to kind of question if the Japanese PS5 launch is just an echo of the PlayStation 5 launch in general, in that there are just not enough games that people want to play that are either exclusives for the PlayStation or that are on the PlayStation at all. Also, the story, I think, can very drastically change the second the PlayStation 5 can wrap up numbers. Once you get the PlayStation 5 in the hands of people, that can easily change the perception of momentum there. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Abyss: The Forgotten Past Prologue, which is already mixed, unfortunately, because I like the way this looks. Typically, I'm a bit of a downer on pixel graphics games, but this one seems like it has some polish to it. And this is a prologue, it's free, and the actual game is coming soon, but it certainly doesn't help anything to have a mixed review demo of your game. That's not putting the best foot forward. A lot of this feels reminiscent of what the Adventures of Link, the sequel to The Legend of Zelda, could have been in a more modern time. But so many screenshots also show a lack in puzzles and enemies, even though you see a health bar and a stamina bar. There's not a lot being shown in the screenshots. And if you look at the actual gameplay, it seems like you do fight some people, but not a lot. I've seen a lot of games that kind of seem to kind of consistently drop the ball in that avenue. Let's hit this. Well, I guess since Abyss: The Forgotten Past Prologue is just a demo, there's nothing to do. But, yeah, that's a shame. Check Raptor has this article. Dragon Quest XI launch sees the original game pulled from sale, and I guess that is why I didn't see it on the storefront. And here you can see you have perhaps sharper, less softened details on the Dragon Quest XI, where here, if you look at the hair, it's kind of lower resolution. So, but it's also kind of brightened up with less shadowing. Looking at the background, it seems to be fairly the same. But then you look at like these buttons, and these buttons to me look better. So why is the S version? Why would you do that? Like that is really crazy. To bring in, or attempt to bring in, parity to the Nintendo DS version. Yep. Reduced Nintendo Switch graphics are a downer for fans. And you'd think the S version I just don't know. It's described as a definitive edition of the game. Gamers on the forum are discovering that this port of the Nintendo Switch version downgrades the graphics. In many retrospects, the comparison of the downgrades in 4K can be seen on the discussion. Where to buy the other versions of Dragon Quest. Yeah. So the Steam store page still exists, you just can't buy it. You can apparently buy it from the Humble store and get a Steam code. Yep. That really feels like a case where they just wanted to support one code base and they were willing to lower the graphics. And that seems unacceptable in my book, considering you're talking a Dragon Quest series. But that is kind of the problem with like Square Enix. I believe it is Square Enix that made the Dragon Quest games. So like, what you would ideally want to get is the digital edition of Light, and it was on my wish list. Instead, there might literally be more content in the newer version, and I think it's also fair to say here, this is a Square Enix game, and this is a great argument to say why Square Enix should not be allowed to continue to make games. Well, 2 years later, they downgraded. The graphics in this game aren't particularly great anyways, so why downgrade it even more? Let's go look at this listing. Well, it's listed as very positive at the moment, but yeah, that definitely sucks. At the core of it, I don't think you're gonna be spending that much time looking at the graphics anyways, and I don't know why this 2D mode, the 2D mode, may very well be the reason why they downgraded the graphics, is because the older version may just not have supported that. But that really does feel like a half-assing of an idea. That there's really just no no good argument in there at all to
Rusty horseshoe.
2 years later release the Switch version ported to PC with downgraded graphics. It should not be difficult to have maintained 4K graphics. It also inherently implies that they will never be able to release a like 4K remaster of that
Horseshoe.
of the game, and it just inherently shows that Square Enix is not particularly a trustworthy company that you would want to give your business to. And what does that say for like something like Final Fantasy VII? Or are they going to potentially end up releasing a Final Fantasy VII remastered version that has Switch graphics on PC also? Like, you'd have a much larger audience complaining about that. So, yeah, just bad business. Bad business. Next, we have a game on Steam called Ad Movir, which I don't know if that's supposed to be a different language. It's tagged as a visual novel. I would be willing to call this an art style, certainly.
Father.
But it does, to me, seem like it is just a kinetic visual novel. And the trailer here just shows this girl crying, then her eyes light up, and then she ends up in maybe some psychedelic thing. It says, "Can you guide an aspiring artist to success?" $2.54. English only, 7 achievements. See, it's episodic also. I like this art style, but there's way too many caveats around that. Otherwise, an episodic, expensive visual novel that feels like it's a kinetic visual novel. A story that sounds like it's fairly boring. The text on the screen looks fairly small here also. It feels like you could have easily had a bigger font or an adjustable size font. So I'm going to skip that. Next we have Golf Around 1.0 full release. $3.99, bunch of languages. So there have been multiple games like this. This one has single player and online PvP, where there are mini golf games. And a lot of these feel like they are games that would only really be fun if you were playing with someone else. If any of these screenshots would work. Yeah, I'm still having problems with my network this whole week. It has been messing up, and I'm not exactly sure why. And so I don't even know how to fix it. It's clear that there was some setting I changed at some point when I went back to the old settings. I hadn't changed that. It may very well just be the number of open ports that I run out of RAM. Which I could certainly adjust that, or the timeout on the ports. It may very well be that. But I also haven't gone and fixed the quality of service to make sure images try to load a little bit faster. So I need to get back and try that again. I'm a little gun shy as far as changing the settings yet again and potentially causing more trouble. Yeah, this mini golf doesn't look interesting enough. It does look fine, but it feels like this is a game where you're going to mostly have to make your own fun. Not a game where it has a discrete collection of mini golf levels.
Together we are whole.
Although I will say, Golf Around does seem to have an intriguing collection of abilities like that you generally wouldn't see in mini golf. So actually, I am gonna put this on the fall list. I'm gonna be a little bit more generous. I've been fairly cruel today as far as games. Here we have a game on Steam called Yomi Domini, which looks like a RPG Maker, maybe player versus player game, or maybe just action game. Seems like you're fighting mostly single player, but it seems like it's not. It's just on-screen action of beating up characters. But visually, it just looks boring. $11.99, English full audio, a bunch of other languages full audio, but not interface or subtitle support on any of the other languages, which inherently means that they don't speak.
Detestable.
The things I do for fashion.
Yeah, nothing impressive there. Twitch support had something. They have a new status page. No, that's not it. Auto host will be temporarily suspended from view. They're also working on a starting soon shelf on the following pages. And then we had already mentioned to boost the stream. So Twitch feels like they're trying to do something to add new features, which finally, but good for them in a lot of ways too. Alright, so OpenCritic has the Cyberpunk 2077 articles. They're giving a mighty rating. The top critic average is 91. The critics recommend is 90. The percentage of critics who recommend it is 97%. Which, at a certain level, you kind of expect that everybody is going to give it a high marks, because there's probably so much rabid fanboys of the game before it's even out that they're afraid to be more critical of the game. At a certain level too, the Cyberpunk 2077 has to be as good as everybody thinks it will be, even if that description is not fair or accurate.
Bow before my tempest.
So much work to do. You're mean.
So let's see. We have a 78 out of 100, which this might be more accurate. Some nice characters and stories nested in an astounding world, undercut by jarring bugs at every turn. This is PC Gamer. Eurogamer. Unscored beyond the bombast and bugs. Cyberpunk 27 has a very human heart. Let's see, no audience reviews. There probably won't be that many reviews in general. Easy Allies, never even heard of them. Unscored. Game Informer 9 out of 10. Polygon unscored. You're noticing a lot of these. Giant Bomb is unscored. Early impressions, discussions, they should have delayed this game even more. One word, undercooked. And Giant Bomb in particular, it tends not to have the controversial underscoring of games. Yeah, they're looking for support on Patreon. So you've got definitely some people giving it 9.5s, 9.8s, 5 out of 5s, which would be 100, 10 out of 10. Here we have Game Beast giving it a 3 out of 5. Yep. Remember, all of these people have early access, got early access to these games too, so they could have been playing it from weeks, if not possibly even a month or two early in secret. So that inherently convinces them to give it a higher score also. But there's a decent amount of unscored here. My personal concern, ignoring the reviews of others, is that Cyberpunk 2077 might be in one relatively large, it might be a relatively large area, but not that big of an area. It might not have as much art, game design in it as you would think.
Need a loan?
So much work to do. You're mean.
This covenant
Feast
extends
upon
beyond death.
Yeah, there definitely is. There is a level. Sorry, I went quiet there. That I have concerns that Cyberpunk 2077 will not be the game that was shown originally, where you had cops shooting this robot lady with giant claws coming out of her hands and bullets and great graphics skimming her face, and that this was going to be potentially a Cyberpunk Witcher 3 with way better graphics and more of a first-person perspective. And my fear is instead it is going to be much more like a combination of all the storyline dialogue parts that were in Witcher 3 without any of the action at all. That probably will only get you so far. I've still yet to see an actual gameplay loop in it, and at a certain point I feel that Cyberpunk 2077 might just be a very visual polished version of a Telltale game, and that might work, but that very well could disappoint a lot of people also. Let's see. See, OpenCritic also said they took down a countdown timer.
the uncharted desert awaits.
And seems like they were thinking they weren't going to get any reviews at all, just impressions. They retweeted Giant Bomb in particular and pointed them out to Twitch. I've also noticed Giant Bomb has started putting out clips on YouTube too, so they may be getting desperate. They also have this article, which catches my eye. The Game Awards 2020 will be streamed using new accessibility features. What are these accessibility features going to be, though? Special audio descriptive mode live stream on YouTube Gaming. Good. Like, in all fairness, that could have been done for every single stream, that for any organization that can pay somebody to do that and just closed caption things. So it's kind of a shame that more people haven't embraced that idea. But it would be a lot more complicated to have somebody sign language a live stream, and I'm not sure you need a sign language if somebody's typing in the audio description anyways. It'd be for only a few people that couldn't read English but could understand sign language, American Sign Language in particular. There's more than likely not a great solution out there to take a subtitle out of a YouTube stream and put it into a Braille system if you were blind, but I guess at some point you could listen in that case, unless you were also deaf and blind, and then at that point are you even really playing video games? The secondary audio description is probably about the only accessibility you can do for a live broadcast. I can't imagine anything else short of other languages, which that wouldn't hurt either. That would be the next step, is for them to say that they were going to live broadcast into, if they did Spanish and French, that's all of North America and region 1. If they start going further than that, they could do
Cheers and goodbye.
they could do like maybe Japanese, Chinese. Maybe that wouldn't be your first guess. Maybe after you go Spanish and French, maybe you start then trying to go with, I don't know if any of the other European countries have enough people for it to matter, that you'd want to translate to Swedish or Polish or something like that, or German. German very well might be a good fourth pick.
I'm coming for you.
At a certain point you might go Russian. There might be some political reasons against that. At a certain point you might go Chinese, just because you'd get a lot of people in that case. If you're paying somebody to subtitle your scripts anyways, it would make a lot of sense to pay somebody to subtitle your scripts to other languages. On the other hand, certainly we could just also say the Game Awards is virtue signaling a little bit here. Although in this case I can't really make that accusation legitimately. A secondary audio description is hardly virtue signaling. It's something that should have been done. They definitely want a pat on the back for doing the right thing, but in this case I'd be willing to give it to them, since they are actually doing the right thing, and it's practically impossible to make an argument that you shouldn't have a secondary audio description if you can have it. Now, on my videos, personally as a YouTuber, if YouTube's not going to automate that, I just don't have the time or the ability, and definitely don't have the financing as a failed YouTuber to pay someone to type up secondary audio description. And YouTube specifically made it more difficult or impossible for people to make their own subtitles and submit them. And in all fairness, nobody was doing that anyways. It's not realistic that someone would randomly do that. So it is kind of a catch-22. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article. My Games has grabbed a minority stake in 3 mobile studios. Belarus-based mobile studios, Appy Furious, Purple Games, and App Life. I think I've heard of Appy Furious. Yeah. My Games Venture Capital is a Russian video game company, which basically means there's a decent chance that's either a shady Russian company or a shady Russian company that's a front for the shady Russian government to launder money. Or maybe it is just influence peddling. Maybe Russia's getting into that game like China does. Gamasutra has a blog here. 4 in 5 consumers don't know what cloud gaming can offer. Omida's research reveals. Okay, that definitely seems like an advertisement for Omida, who I have no idea what that is, or just a general advertisement for cloud gaming. It's a hard sell, certainly, though, to tell somebody you should go buy a $300 laptop or PC and then start paying a monthly fee for cloud gaming because I've just suggested that you buy a underpowered PC. It makes a lot more sense to tell somebody to go buy a console, because that makes it nice and easy. It makes a lot of sense to have a...
To die or not
to give kids consoles instead of PCs.
Forgive me.
Frankly, I think the best move would be to have to not have kids get into PC gaming until kids and their friends are probably in high school level and willing and capable of building their own computers. Once they've built their own computers, and if they catch the bug, then that's the point to say, okay, PC gaming's a thing. Of course, up until that point, they probably would be building up a collection in console games, and so there's a redundancy of double buying the games. So I could also see the argument very much of just having a solid rule that says, no, I'm going to give you a PC and you're going to have a Steam library and you're going to thank me for it later, even though you can't play with most of your friends. In a weird way, you could probably give someone a PC and a Steam library just to ensure that they're not playing with other kids or anyone else, if that's a major concern. This.
You're a big
This.
fella.
This town eats good folk for breakfast.
And let's go and try this.
You're gonna regret this all together now.
That was resplendent.
The ESA came out with an economic growth article here. Economic output while supporting. This is not showing right. It's probably zoomed out too much. They're supporting nearly 429,000 jobs in all 50 states, they say, which I bet some of these numbers are fairly dubious, because they're probably supporting half as many actually in the video game industry, and then half of them are custodian supporters or landlords, things that are jobs, yes, but they are secondary assistive jobs, because that's typically how these numbers get fluffed up in the form of puffery. They seem to have an interactive map that you can click on that will tell you more if you're interested in that. And I would just say, yeah, zoom out a lot if you're gonna look at this article. Yes.
Will usher in a new age.
Evolve.
Sleep.
Abs more cut than dying, so time to get cut.
補修が必要みたい。
Protein time.
Let's move on. Trying to rush and not moving very fast at all. TechRaptor has an article here. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game complete edition, launches January 14th. I'm still very shocked that they're re-releasing this game. This feels like something THQ Nordic would be doing. It's a 10-year-old game based on a comic book that was popularized, I think, mostly by people who really didn't like comic books that much. And a lot of stories and books for a good 10 years were like that, and perhaps that says more about who I was listening to and who was influencing what I thought was popular, influencing my mind. But yeah, I definitely heard a lot of talk around Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and Ender's Game and several other stories and books like that. There was just, I would almost assume at this point, a publishing company that was actively telling YouTubers and podcasters to promote this product secretly, Yeah. That's not to say I think that there's really anything wrong with this game. And I'd probably be fine with playing it. But it's kind of hard to... It's kind of hard to justify really wanting to play something that just has no relevance. I wouldn't be surprised if when this actually comes out, we start to see a lot of reviews that says it's just a beat 'em up game that kind of fails miserably now in comparison to something like River City Girls, and it just doesn't even have the history of the River City series, which River City Girls did. Let's see. Well,
Accelerator, Compasso!
let's hit that.
But my will abides.
Next, we have a Gematsu article. Rust for PS4 and Xbox One is delayed to 2021. I feel like the game Rust has been out for a while. Yeah, it launched on Steam in 2018. And so this is like re-releases, and we're starting to get delays on games that have been out that are just getting re-released. Rust is, I guess, that survival game, one of several survival games where you start off naked and you're collecting things and building things. I recall games like this, but they've all turned into such a crazy blur. But I do think I remember it. Although I also would say it very well may not matter too much
I could never set foot in the sun.
nowadays, because Rust almost certainly was a flash in the pan game that I bet its player base is not anywhere high enough for it to be launched into new people. Well, actually, I don't have to bet, do I? I can see right now there's 74,000 people online. The peak today was 81,000. The all-time peak was 125,000. So there seemingly are a lot of people still playing this.
Drowns the wails of the damned.
You can see that while you start off naked with just a rock, Rust goes seemingly in far directions. So they must have added a lot of content since the last time I saw it. This seems insanely detailed.
You, I can move forward.
Yeah, that definitely seems like you move quite a bit. At a certain level, though, I'm not sure I want to play a game like Rust because it's just not. It's just overly complicated. Yeah, it would take so much grinding. I'm just assuming to get to the level to which you're not just building wooden tier items and you're actually building like modern technology items. Okay. I do this, and I do this.
That was resplendent.
And then if I hit that, then in the turn, well, I might be wrong. Maybe Rust would still sell fairly well when it comes out. Speaking of being wrong, I would have sworn that the game El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron was never going to get re-released in any other format ever. It was a cool game with kind of a bad gameplay mechanic, but a cool story. It's based off of apocryphal Jewish text, which you very rarely get that. It's a Japanese developer doing it, which always is interesting because they are willing to go in wild directions and not really overly respect religious things, particularly Western religions. But I was wrong. According to Gemetsu, El Shaddai, Ascension of the Metatron, is coming to PC. It's a fairly old game, 2011. You kind of ends on a cliffhanger. The game director, Sawaki Takayasu, I feel like he made some other things later. Said this on Twitter. It's currently in development, but I imagine people would like to know its progress. I'd like to share its status from time to time. Also, since hardware has changed from the Xbox and PS3 to PC, we're making things like a launcher that doubles as an option for switching between English and Japanese voiceovers and text. It originally launched for the PS3 and 360 in 2011. Let's see. The main thing I would like to see is this guy more than anything, because almost certainly I would have seriously, just everybody's putting pop-ups and asking for money these days. It's not the time. Everybody's broke.
Eradicate all demons.
Activating system interface subroutine.
Okay. So this guy, what did he work on? He worked on the 2011 Devil May Cry, so there's his credibility there. He's worked on a couple Steel Battalion games. He made Okami. Okami came to PC a couple years ago, maybe a year or two ago. So we're kind of seeing how all his games are slowly moving. Fatal Frame, Mask of Lunar Eclipse, potentially might come to PC. Infinite Space, don't know. Apparently there was a social character designer, a social battle guy game called El Shaddai Social Battle, and it doesn't have a link, it's so irrelevant. And then he worked on Gravity Rush 2, so this might be the guy that just formed a new company with the other guys, or might be on the verge of doing that. And then God Wars, Future Planet, and then The Lost Child. It's worth mentioning, though, even though he was the director on this, most of the other jobs he had have not been directors or high management jobs, except for The Lost Child. And I feel like The Lost Child, let's see, he bought the rights from the El Shaddai series, and Lost Child is supposed to be a follow-up to the game. I guess it came out. I guess it came out and didn't get any coverage. So, but that does definitely put you in a interesting position where if I did get El Shaddai, then I also have to then potentially sit on it, because I know that ends at a bit of a cliffhanger, to hope that The Lost Child comes out on PC, which it's not. But it came out on the Switch, and frankly, if something came out on the Switch these days, it's fairly easy for it to come out on PC. That's a very interesting niche game, for sure. But it does also
Time for me to prove myself.
it doesn't also probably light the fire under a lot of people who have never heard of El Shaddai. El Shaddai, by the way, is Jewish for God Almighty. El is the Jewish name for God, and Shaddai means Almighty. Let's see. Moving on, we have a TechRaptor article. A unfinished Batman Arkham Asylum DS prototype has been leaked. I watched about a minute-long video of this, showing off this demo. This Batman character for DS is terribly animated, as you can see in these screenshots. and the bad guys didn't move, but Batman could jump around and beat them up. It feels, frankly, here's that video actually that I watched. It's about 2 minutes long. It feels like it would have been a lot of work to create something very, very different from what the other Arkham Asylum games are, as was the way old mobile games used to be made, where you just have a completely different game with the exact same name. And I imagine the DS was probably the point at which game companies stopped doing that, doing the bait and switch of, oh, a parent is dumb enough to buy the mobile version of a DS version of a game and expect it to look as good and play the same way as a console version of the game. Yeah, we should go and look at the battle pass. We haven't looked at that in a while. And then we have to launch out. On the other hand, I think it is also worth mentioning that Warner Brothers probably would not bat an eye if they could get away with it for making a Batman mobile game that had the exact same name as whatever the latest Batman game that they make and sell is, and still try to create confusion. See. Get that reward. And let's look at the battle pass. So this ends December 27th. And I'm at 50. And I was thinking 90 was, well, it seems like 80 might be the one you really would want to stop. 90 gives you one more piece of a Seer gem. Going up to 100, you get a full globe. Yeah, I seriously doubt that there's a decent argument here to buy this. If I was to buy this, I'd get the Mouseker's leader skin, and that would, well, let's just see what else we get. We get golden packs, and more packs to open, more cards. We get the Mouseker's frame, more packs, fractions of Seer gems. Yeah, I don't think I want to support the battle pass system in just on general principle alone, frankly. Let's just go back to our standard go-to in Forestcraft, and we'll just go through each of the unlimited characters, and then we'll maybe go and do some rotation games. I feel like the Batman games in particular are in this weird waiting period where they seem unwilling to pull the trigger and just reboot the Batman games. I think it would be an interesting twist if they tried to make like a Batman 66, like really kid-friendly Batman game to then wash the taste of the last terrible hardcore dark Batman game out of their mouth, and then immediately after doing a Batman 66 game, then they go right back to dark Batman era. I think there might very well be a good argument to not introducing the Joker anywhere as early as they did. That they had a formula there. It kind of worked. You look at Spider-Man games, it works. There isn't really a Miles Morales equivalent, though, of Batman. So you're going to have Batman. You could certainly have a younger Batman instead of the final, the adult, maturest version of Batman. Like, unless you're gonna make a Batman Beyond game set in the future, and I And you could try that certainly, but I don't know if that's going to work.
Help me, fairies. Stay away.
But just bringing out the Bat Kids in a game, and which is what they're doing with the next one, and teasing like the real Batman isn't going to show up after that is when it's fairly obvious he will. It's kind of just a waste of
Let's play. Hey, let's play.
waste of
Help
energy.
me, fairies. Stay away.
Moving on, as I try to burn through the news, Epic Games is ditching in-person Fortnite events for 2021. No duh, I imagine that's the case for everything.
Coming for you.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, I talked about that. The other thing I would say about Cyberpunk 2077, this isn't the character, but there is definitely a character they started to kind of highlight in some of the trailers, where she is barely wearing a shirt to cover up her cleavage. Not this girl, but a different girl. I'm just using this as a female body example, robot body, and the sexuality and gender fluidity of the characters in Cyberpunk 2077. Well, you may very well see extremely censored reviews from a lot of game developers to not show those parts, or we're going to start seeing a lot of Let's Players just accidentally walk into a room and see fairly nude, if not completely nude characters. And this next week or two is potentially going to be a pushing of how far you can go with the YouTube family friendliness, which we will see.
Whoa, you're strong.
Let's see. Sega generally doesn't have job listings, but they are looking for a junior product manager in Sega Europe. This is in Brentford. Brentford, I assume, is in the UK. Yeah, they say is one in UK, Belgium, France, Canada. So unless there's a Brentford, Bulgaria, or France. Not Belgium, Bulgaria. I misread that. I would assume there's a Brentford, UK. It's a 12-month full-time contract, which why you would be hiring a junior product manager for 12-month full-time contract instead of just full-time continued employment is probably because you're trying to pull some anti-pension shenanigans and anti-benefits shenanigans on an employee in Europe, which probably wouldn't work too well. And then the bigger question, of course, would be, what is Sega really working on or publishing? Probably not a lot. They probably are just hiring somebody as a temporary middle person, since they probably know that they don't have anything that they're going to publish in the next 12 months. Best case scenario, I can imagine Sega is going to relaunch a bunch of old Sega games, or make one new Sonic game and try and make that succeed. I did hear that I heard this, and I'm going to put this in the rumor mill more than anything, but apparently the voice actress for Space Channel 9, or whatever that Dreamcast game is, apparently she is just completely missing. Like they can't find her, or she doesn't want to be found, and that is apparently the excuse as to why there's not been any remaster, remake, or continuation of that series. That doesn't make a lot of sense, frankly. A voice actress missing just means you could replace the voice actress unless they had some legal rights, and even then you probably could work around that or just make a new game. I feel like more than likely what the case is there's just no real reason to make a new Space Channel 9 when you can make any other kind of rhythm game and it worked just as well. And also I would imagine the Western audience is probably much more interested in a remake or continuation of Space Channel 9 than the Eastern market, who have long since moved on to other virtual anime girls that look differently and are drawn differently. At a certain point that might be a direct split between Westerners preferring an older looking anime girl and Easterners going for the more slightly younger moe art style.
No one gets past me.
This is our way out.
But yeah, they could definitely recast if they cared. Gematsu has an article here. The Power Rangers Battle for the Grid DLC character Scorpina has a trailer out, which definitely feels like there's more Power Rangers bad guys than I knew about. But in all fairness, I definitely only played, I only watched maybe 5 episodes of Power Rangers of the first series, and that's it. Like, Power Rangers was not my deal. And this fighting game seems to be working. At a certain level, you have this catch-22 that Power Rangers is definitely a kid show, but it is also a fairly violent beat-em-up kid show, and so a fighting game falls a little further in that direction, in which all you're doing is beating up people, whereas at least in the TV show there probably would have been a moral to each episode. But it does seem like it's succeeding more than I would have thought. That can attack twice.
Pick up your sword.
At your service.
This is our way out.
Which means if I had attacked with this, I could have actually given this storm and attacked for one more. Didn't play that right. A game called Curse of the Sea Wretch launches in 2021. Why do I have that open like that, though? That's not what I meant to do. I would have it open like this. It's described as a Ratovania. See what it looks like. A late entry for the Year of the Pirate.
I do not fear death.
Okay. Looks nicely animated. Looks like it's going a different way. Cartoon rats aren't gonna interest me much or irritate me much, so I'm neutral there. Looks like it's got some nice polish. It's from P-Cube. It's rated 7, age Peggy 7. Yeah, that's an intriguing idea. This is, at the very least. Alright, well, hit this. And then I'll do this.
As my guitar gently beats.
Okay. Now, who do we want to kill? That one? Oh, wait. No. I could have won right then.
No one gets past me.
This is our way out.
That was a dumb move on my part. Should have just taken the victory. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Marvelous's first studio seeking staff for a PS5 Xbox Series game. Large-scale RPG is currently in development. It's literally called First Studio. They worked on Daemon Ex Machina, Fate Extella Link, God Eater 3, Fate Extella, Soul Sacrifice Delta, Soul Sacrifice. So they're hardly a new company. They've just been doing a lot of third-party assistant development. Or arguably, I guess maybe I'm misreading this title. Maybe since the name of it is First Studio, maybe they're really just saying they're seeking staff for a large-scale RPG, and that they have worked on other games. Yeah, I guess that's the more accurate way to read that. I need to switch this guy out. He's annoying, to say the least. So, a large scale RPG is in development. Always good to know. TechRaptor has an article here. Nintendo is accused of canceling a Splatoon 2 tournament livestream due to Smash supporting team names. Which, yeah, Nintendo has gotten on the bad side of streamers, and now they're in for a fight. And yep, Nintendo probably is not going to ever see themselves as the bad guy. This would be a case particularly where Bowser's going to have to step in, or Nintendo of Japan is going to have to actually learn their lesson and say, look, we done goofed up here, and they probably won't do that. They'll probably just try to weather the storm. I wouldn't be surprised if the next responses to this is Nintendo just cancels all tournaments everywhere. But in the long run, I think this is probably the right response, is that Nintendo fanboys have been Nintendo fanboys. As a former Nintendo fanboy myself, we've all been fanboys for far too long. It's time to take a step back, reevaluate what Nintendo has always been, which has always been a controlling, manipulative, greedy company in a lot of ways. And they were never really deserving of our fandom and our love as much as they got. We should have been treating Nintendo a lot of in the same way that a lot of Nintendo fanboys felt about Sega and treated Sega as, it's good enough, or it's not that good. There's a long list of really bad Nintendo games that have come out in series, and just extreme delays. Nintendo has not gotten better, they've gotten worse. Particularly with the re-releases of the Mario 64 game and Mario Splash Sunshine and Mario Galaxy. That triple pack was particularly bad, and their online service has been abysmal. The release schedule is often abysmal. The Wii U was garbage. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Ultkill, which looks like a low-effort top-down twin-stick shooter. It's free. It's English only. Let's see what else we've got. We have a game called The Ghost of Joe Papp, 101 Ways to Kill Writer's Block. And this game, when I first saw it, was listed for, I think, $110. See, here's a bundle for all their games for $110, where that might be reasonable if any of these games were good, but you can see none of these games are really reviewed. And so yeah, a large collection of $10 games, which honestly gets dangerously to feeling like it's money laundering than actually making a game. The actual game itself looks like a Western visual novel, looks uninteresting, looks like they kind of have a bad idea as far as positioning people in general when they have multiple groups, and then putting someone in the middle of the screen when there's no one else there seems like a kind of bad idea too. They're breaking all norms as far as just putting characters on the left side of the screen and the right side of the screen so that they can talk, and keeping the central area empty so you can see the background, and putting a character behind another character is a little distracting sometimes also. Let's see. Is there anything else to say there? No. Yeah, it just looks like an uninteresting game. Gematsu has an article. Love Live School Idol Festival After School Activity Wawa Home Meeting launches March 24th, 2021. That's a long name. But once again, great example. Like, why would somebody make Space Channel 9 when they can have a Love Live rhythm game that is more with the modern anime moe girl art style, has more characters in general, which means you can sell more merchandise, which, let's face it, some of this is all about the merchandise anyways. The music rights are newer, so that's easier to do. I imagine the animation of 2D characters versus 3D characters in Space Channel 9 is way easier. I would argue it definitely is. Even if this is CGI, computer generated 2D characters, probably easier to depict with way more animations and movements. There is a decent argument that if Space Channel 9 was remade, the character may move and react in ways that would feel unfamiliar. You basically might make a whole different character that looks and feels differently. At a certain point, it might just be better to make a whole new game with whole new characters. Next, we have a game on Steam called Spacebug, which looks like a space game, dark and low polygon. $3.19 English only. Not making it to the fall list. See, we're at the point where we left off on Friday, so if we can just wrap that up today, we'll be good. Gamma Sutra has that same article. Neil Druckmann is now co-president of Naughty Dog. He was the vice president and creative director of Last of Us Part 2, which, in a funny way, that might mean they just promoted him to his level of incompetence, and they got him away from working on a Last of Us Part 3, which very well may come out. OBS has an announcement here. YouTube has become a premier sponsor of OBS. Which, what does that really mean? Probably doesn't mean anything. I imagine you could probably contribute here through the OBS project. Let's just click that. Open Collective sponsors. Premiere 2. These sponsors have gone far and beyond what their contributions to the OBS project. So it's like a special tier of support that you can see other companies haven't made, and seemingly there's not that many people supporting OBS's development at all, or there's just a lot of low tier support from individuals. Like, in all fairness, it wouldn't have even really occurred to me to support OBS as an open software with financially. But I suppose if I was rolling in cash, which I definitely am not, and I doubt very many people are, supporting OBS would be directly supporting the software I use every time I record and stream. There's probably some other open software that would make a lot of sense to support. There's also even a small possibility that I would, if I was rolling in cash, I might get some closed software if it turned out to be really necessary. Of course, it's a lot easier to justify buying another microphone, another piece of hardware, and having something physically than it is to pay a license for software or support software that's given freely. Like, the only thing I guess I could really take from this is if it turned out that YouTube decided that they were going to only support OBS and not something like XSplit or any other software, or if YouTube was going to try and acquire OBS, that might be a little bit of a problem. Of course, it's open software, so if they acquired OBS, they'd basically just be acquiring the talent of people that work there, and another team almost certainly would split off and make a different project, a fork of the OBS project. And that might cause a schism, and that might cause development to slow down and support to slow down, and we really wouldn't want to see that. Also, I don't know if there's any significant reason why YouTube or Google would want to acquire OBS, since they're getting benefit from it for free already, and it's not like YouTube is good at supporting software and owning software. Moving on, we have a Gamma Sutra article, Do Betas and Demos Right the Monster Train Way, which this is almost certainly an advertisement just for a Monster Train, which I remember hearing about it, and then I kind of heard nothing about it, so it might be a fairly successful game, and I just am out of the loop. Or it might be something more. We already talked about that. Since at this point we're getting to the games that were released on Friday, it's highly unlikely we'll see any adult games. So while we did see one released on Steam, I feel like I would like to see at least 2 more by Friday. Otherwise, I'll have a slight concern there. Although maybe not that much of a concern, because it does feel like we are just kind of in a holding pattern until January. Like we were approaching the end of the year. Here we have a game on Steam called Torchance 6, which is a football simulator game. We've seen lots of these, and none of them ever looked interesting. $31.49, English and German, particularly expensive. Okay. And evolve. And attack.
I will persevere.
In the turn. Next we have a game on Steam called Sluggy Jean Takes a Hike, which seems to be kind of a single screen platforming game where you play as a slug. It's kind of a crazy art aesthetic, but nothing else. $4.99, English only. I'm uninterested in it.
The real battle begins.
Next we have Christmas Movie Bingo, which I don't know how that really plays. Let's see. I guess it's the idea that you have a bunch of people playing and you're watching a Christmas movie to get a bingo. $10.99. They're comparing it to Shadowverse and Stardew Valley. Very extremely different games. English only. Which, the fact that they're comparing it to Shadowverse and Stardew Valley feels like they're just literally suggesting to me two games I've played in the past.
You're a fan too? Who's your OTP? I know what I've lost.
Let's see. Next we have Fingertips Mountain Sea, which that feels like just random words.
Let us conclude.
Looks like it's a Chinese city simulator. $53.99, ridiculously expensive. Says it's English. I doubt. I kind of question that. And then Chinese. Yeah. I already got all the daily quests, so there's no reason to actually continue playing at this point, and so this is a good point to just say no and wrap up. Next we have a game on Steam called Stupid Stories, which looks like a MS Paint. Well, slightly better than your average MS Paint RPG, but that's about it. $3.49 English and German. Next we have a game on Steam called Elemental. You can pretty well tell that I was not curating any games too, so we were scraping the bottom of the barrel. This is some kind of asset flip parkour game where you change into different elements. Early access free, English and Turkish. Not interested there. Although the idea of turning into different elements might work in some games, and even platforming games. It would need a lot more visual polish. Next we have Naharli's Spatial Adventure, which from the looks of it looks like just a ugly RPG game, if any of the screenshots want to load. $4.49 English, Spain Spanish, and Latin America Spanish. Making sure they get both Spanishes in that case. Next we have a game on Steam called Tall Order, which looks like a VR game. Maybe a mountain climbing? Yeah. Climbing and swinging like Spider-Man, that is in VR. But I also see some shooting. $8.99 English full honey. I don't think there's enough visual polish here though to justify this. I'd be willing potentially to see a better polished swinging like Spider-Man VR game and a better polished climbing game and a better polished shooting game in VR. But when you throw three different elements and none of them look polished enough, then there's you really haven't made a better product in my eyes. Next we have a game called Call Parent 2. Don't know what that is. Let's see. Seems like it's a attempt at making a GTA while asset flipping a lot. Early access, English not supported, $11.99 German only, which that makes my decision easy to not put on the full list. Also didn't really look that great. Next we have a game on Steam called Thief Girls Quartet, which looks like it's a platforming, swinging Chinese game of some sort. 4-player online co-op. There's some weirdness here, certainly, in that you have these little chibi anime girls, and then when you zoom out and play the game, you barely get to see them. And this really just looks like what could be a very easily frustrating platforming puzzle game. Early access, English not supported, $2.99 Japanese only. Yep. That is a slight problem, is that Japanese games can have a tendency, and they have had a tendency in the past to be way more difficult. Here we have Tavern of the Gods, which looks to me like it's some kind of RPG. Doesn't look like you're actually running a tavern or anything. Just looks like a Chinese RPG to me. Very positive early access, 1231, English and Chinese. I just don't see anything interesting here. So that's a no for me. Let's see. Next we have Christmas Rampage on Steam, which looks like a game where you run around making a mess, and that's about it. It's slightly more unique than your average low effort Christmas game. I'll applaud it for that, but it also just doesn't seem like it's anything. $4.99, English full audio. Yeah, I honestly can't think of any kind of Christmas game that makes sense to make and sell. You're just eliminating 11 out of 12 months in which you might be able to sell more copies of that game. Next we have a game just called 15 Puzzle, which is a slide puzzle. There's literally nothing here. It's free, so I guess the price is right. But then it has a third-party EULA, so I don't know why that would be necessary. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Wing of Misadventure, which is tagged as a massive multiplayer RPG. Does look visually polished. This isn't something you could just call an RPG Maker game. It is mixed right now though, and it's an MMO. It's free to play with in-app purchases, third-party account, third-party EULA, English and Portuguese Brazil. I'm not sure I really want to play with Portuguese Brazil speaking players, for as many like shady game developers that seem to come out of Portuguese Brazil. Yeah, but it could be that there's nothing especially different about Brazilian video game players at all. But yeah, nothing here because it's an MMO. More than anything, I did like the visual polish of that game. Next we have Guntastic, which is the game where you really look down the sights of a gun and shoot. Nope, it's just a standard player versus player platforming Smash Brothers clone. Beat 'em up. $12.99, which is too expensive. English, single player and online play, English and Italian. Just, we see a ton of those, and they never go anywhere. I don't know why people even bother to try and make them. Next, we have a game on Steam called Swords of Time that looks like an asset flip, trying to look like a JRPG. Yeah, it looks terrible. Absolutely awful. $10.79 English only, being compared to Skyrim. Yeah, right. At a certain point, we might get to a level where I start to get a paranoid suspicion that some of these low-effort games on Steam are literally getting released by big companies like Square Enix just to make their own games look better. Next, we have a game on Steam called Stars Die, which seems to be a low polygon game of some sort. It says it's a psychological horror with multiple endings. I'd guess it's probably a visual novel or very close to that. It's $4.49 English only. They're calling it a real-time sci-fi mystery game with branching dialogues. That sounds like visual novel to me. Yeah, visually it's just not good enough to make the pass. Next, we have a game called The Moneymakers Rally. I assume that's what rally is. That's how you pronounce that word. Rallye. It feels like that's not a real word. Yeah, this looks like a board game that's trying to be converted to a video game and like a Mario Party game. I think there's enough here to put this on the fall list. Maybe I'm just being generous since I've rejected almost everything else today. $13.59, a bunch of languages. I want to see if some people review it. It is fairly expensive though. And let's see. Finally, we have a game on Steam here called Crumble, which looks like almost a Super Monkey Ball game. It looks kind of like a marble game with swinging aesthetics. And the thing here, I feel like more than anything, is the speed. The speed might kill you and make this incredibly frustrating, but also this looks way better designed and polished than your standard fairly slow moving marble game. Dynamic physics platform, $12.74, English only. It's rated very positively. I'm gonna put this on the fall list. This also might just be an infinite runner though, so there may not really be any more of a game to it. It feels like I'd probably want to see a game like this where you do a lot of platforming and swinging and running and gaining speed, but at a certain point you get into a slower area where you have to take your time and actually look around for collectibles and investigate, maybe interact with people. Anything along that line. Yeah, and there was some games on the monthly Humble bundle that I was going to look up and haven't gotten around to it, the Humble Choice. And then that brings me to the Humble Bundle in general. While there are several sales that end in a day, I bet there's not any new game sales until that happens. Yeah. I also wouldn't be surprised if there aren't any new game sales until 7 days from now or the new year. Let's see. So then that brings me to my Twitter feed, and we'll see what new news has happened while we're streaming. We've gone 3 hours. And this Monday might be something. Here I'm seeing a visualization of how Python code can depixelize anything that's been blurred fairly well, so that pixelization and blurring doesn't really work. But there is certainly also a mental level there. If I run a blur over video, I'm trying to give you a general idea of the shapes and colors of what you would see, but I can't show that. Almost certainly, if I'm running a blur on a video, it's because it's an adult game showing nudity or something. Whereas if I was to just go all black screen or solid black bar, which would be a lot more difficult to do, that gives less visual detail. And as a content creator, you actually want the visual detail, even if you have to blur it to make it YouTube family friendly. But I guess there's a big difference between blurring somebody's credit card number and blurring a boob in an anime video game. Yeah, the Virtue's Last Reward game that I'm playing right now arguably could have been a game where I very well may have been better off if I had blurred blurred every scene with Alice, the character Alice in it. Yeah, a lot of games have come out. There's some new Myst game apparently coming out for the Oculus Quest by the looks of these visuals. I thought they were just going to re-release Myst. I'm very shocked and potentially upset by that idea that there would be something in the Myst universe that you could only play if you had an Oculus Quest. Still scrolling down my Twitter feed. The Game Awards apparently are right about to happen. Let's see. But there's definitely not... There's definitely not more... any real reason to stay online streaming to cover the Game Awards. G4 TV tweeted 2 hours ago, just making a cyberpunk joke, which, okay, they've been silent for about a week. Yep. There probably should be some slight concern with G4 TV coming back in whatever format it is going to come back, because the production company behind it, when I looked into it, I think is kind of more known for doing movies and like horror movies too, so not particularly the highest budget action movies or anything like that. So there is a possibility them trying to run a YouTube channel or TV show or whatever G4 actually ends up being might very well overwhelm them. Tech Raptor is still highlighting the Nunchaku games, which at a certain point here, I'm getting very close to stop mentioning these articles, but Rebless ZWR brings fantasy gacha gals to Nunchaku. The big problem certainly seems to be that, like, these games come out and then they get just abandoned. You can see that it is basically just a probably turn-based idle game. If I was to guess, I bet all these characters move on their own, and you're really just focused on leveling up your characters. It probably doesn't even have that many characters anyways. Gacha games in particular really have to be supported, and I'm not sure I trust any Nunchaku game to do that. Here we have a game on Steam called Uranus, which looks like a psychedelic mind trip. I'm not sure if there's an actual game here. This is one of those games where it's just so weird. It's an abstract 1 versus 1 spherical playscape racing game. $2.39 English only. I'm going to put this on the fall list just because I cannot understand what's even being shown to me at the moment from Not a Game Studio, which that sure doesn't inspire confidence. Then we also had Guildmaster gratuitous subtitle, which that's a joke. Subtitle for a game that looks fine, but it looks old as like an RPG. It's $13.99. It's too expensive. It's English, allegedly full audio. Then that's just too much money. Next we have Slapshot Rebound, which looks like a hockey game. This probably is the right time to make hockey games instead of Christmas games. And I kind of like the Weeble Wobble art style of these guys. It's early access, free to play with in-app purchases. So I'd say, yeah, check this out. I don't like that model though. I definitely would. It has online PvP, but I don't like the model of in-app purchases in a hockey game for sure. And I don't like that it's early access and that seemingly there's no like campaign mode of any sort. Next we have Ignis Universa Eternal Sisters Saga DX, which looks like a Japanese. It's tagged as a JRPG and visual novel. It looks like something that could have been on a Game Boy Color. Question, I suppose, as to really, yes, it is. It's fairly pixely. I kind of have to wonder how many interactions and battles there actually are in a game like this. Is this somehow going to merge a JRPG and a visual novel and end up with a game that's less than 30 hours? It's free too, so it must be an advertisement for something else. English only. Let's see. Deep engaging combat mechanics for a 3-year-old. Yeah, unless this developer had something else to sell, which they seemingly don't. There's a mostly negative thing here. They have this DLC that's labeled as overpriced DLC for $3.99. Seems like people are just doing a lot of joke titles in their listings. Next we have a game on Steam here called Dancing in the Moonlight, which seems to be some asset flip craziness. Like, I would like for this to really be that the character is really mobile and jumps and backflips and such, but looking at their actual animations, it seems like there's a jump up and then there's a twist to the left or right, and arguably there's these 3D bullet hells elements of things you're trying to avoid as you're trying to get to the center, and this just looks like a huge visual mess where I would never be able to really focus my eyes enough to see where I was going. Yeah, this is $4.99 English and Japanese. Just not enough polish on that idea. Next we have Nomads of Driftland, which it's tagged as a real-time strategy game. Looks like it's got some floating islands. Looks like you play against players. It's free. Once again, lots of free games. English full audio, then a bunch of other languages. It's apparently a demo for Nomads the Forgotten Passage, or DLC. I guess that's DLC they're trying to sell. Single player. Is it single player only? Yeah. I just don't see anything there interesting enough. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Headbangers and Holiday Hell, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter that oddly might just barely have enough polish visually to make it to the fall list. $4.89 English full English and full audio. Interesting, it says OBS and Holiday Hell. And this is the OBS logo in the background. So he's got some announcement here talking about how he's probably having trouble with OBS, which it's not that difficult to use OBS on its default settings. Next we have a game on Steam here called The Conquest of Go, which just looks like you're playing Go. which, fair enough, if you want to play Go, play Go. Although I don't know if I really like all the different skins they have for different types of Go. I would just prefer to play this way with nice polished black and white marbles on a nice wood board. This is early access for $13.49, which is too expensive. It also requires a third-party account for no good reason. So I'm going to say no to that. Tech Raptor has an article here. Hearthstone rewards track update coming later in December of 2020. New gold rewards, bonus level redesign, and more. The rewards was introduced just over a month ago as a new way to give players rewards for playing the game. Unfortunately, it seems Blizzard hasn't gotten the balance right. Weekly quests that require legendary cards or arena runs are being removed. A weekly quest that required players to win 7 games has been reduced to 5 games. Tavern brawls and battlegrounds now contribute towards quest progress. Some quests are getting small tweaks to make them easier to complete. One example is the play 50 corrupt cards. I don't even know what a corrupt card is. I haven't played Hearthstone in so long. This requirement is required to play reduced to 30 corrupt cards. All 800 XP daily quests will reward 900 XP. See, the XP requirements for the current rewards track have been reduced to 37,000 XP, almost a 20% reduction in length. Yeah, I'm just so out of the loop with Hearthstone though that none of that even makes any sense to me. Nor do I care to be in the loop with Hearthstone. I'm just really sitting and twiddling my thumbs until the second dinner game gets made. Like, we just earlier today saw an Activision Blizzard article, just still proving that Activision Blizzard tends to be kind of a jerk, and they're suing their own former employee, basically. Yeah, I'm confused. Really, as far as I'm looking at this Oculus listing, and I haven't looked at a lot of Oculus listings at all of Mist on Oculus, and it seems to be showing me the exact same images that would have been in the main game, but then the screenshot on Twitter was different. Says new art, sound, interactions, and even optional puzzle randomization, which would be new. They've reimagined Mist, build from the ground up for VR. New art, sound, interactions, and optional puzzle randomization. Yeah, you can't sell anything Mist that doesn't play like the original Mist, though. But you could certainly give a new gameplay mode. Well, I'm still confused as far as what new content would actually be in that version and how much of that really would matter to me. I guess we'll have to wait for some reviews to come out when the game comes out in a few hours or days. TechRaptor has an article. Telltale Games, the new Telltale Games, I suppose, has restored 3 classics titles to Steam. So is it both of their original games of poker, Texas Hold'em, and all of the Wallace Gromit and Strong Bad? The Wallace and Gromit one actually is the one I don't think I have, and I don't know exactly why I wouldn't have it, but interesting. Yeah, I had pretty much all the Telltale games. I had Strong Bad game, and then Telltale Texas Hold'em. I feel like there was a second Texas Hold'em game, or was it just called Telltale Poker? Arguably all of those games are fairly so old it doesn't make a good argument to play them. Well, here it is. I can put it on my wish list. But I can also say that $14.99 is a high price, and they didn't even label things correctly here. And there's no bundle for Telltale Games. So this is being published by Athlon Games. So yeah. So we got a DLC Shadows mode. I don't even know what Shadows mode is. Shadows Edition for Batman Telltale. Yeah, we're starting to see, I guess, them relist Telltale games they can. And what is the Shadows mode? Let's see. Brings a captivative new look to the story, enhanced with hand recolored gameplay and remastered textures. Oh, so just play the game a second time with different art. Okay. So that's what it looks like in Shadows mode. Let's see what it looks like out of Shadows mode. And how much do they want for Shadows mode? Like, because that feels like that should be a free thing you unlock, not extra price. So you get more color and you get more Telltale look, more of a Telltale look outside of Shadows mode. I kind of agree with them that the Shadows mode probably does put it more in line with looking like a Batman game, but it does then take it away from being in line of looking like a Telltale game. So I guess the real question, first and foremost, is can you really feel like you're playing something that isn't a Telltale game if you play it in Shadows mode? And I imagine the answer is probably no. And they wanted $5 for this new mode. Or you could get the bundle here for $5. I haven't even played the game in its original format, so it's kind of silly to go that route. And they seem to be using the same screenshots for the Telltale series and the Enemy Within series to show off Shadows modes. These are the exact same screenshots. So they were apparently exceedingly lazy as far as even presenting the story. And the Enemy Within is the sequel, right? Latest chapter. Yeah, it's the sequel. So some kind of major shenanigans still going on, to say the least. And I guess that will bring me back to my Twitter feed, and I'll just check one more time and then we'll call it a day. We took us about 24 minutes to wrap up all the news the second time. IGN is promoting the RPG tabletop version of Tiny Tina's Bunkers and Badasses. Apparently they're going to do a playthrough of it. That's the Borderlands game that they've spun off into an actual tabletop game. Gearbox has been fairly quiet lately, and I guess that's good in the long run, but you kind of would have almost liked them to have announced something new, or just give a little bit of sign of life to prove that they aren't on the verge of shutting down. But I guess that in this current environment, anybody could shut down at any time. Alright, well, I'm going to go back to playing Virtue's Last Reward for 3-hour episodes, and that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.